So, and that's where the issue of regulation, excuse me, consumer protection, competition management, would come in. The role of the president and the role of the presidency and the federal government cannot be, in this very dire times, cannot be to appeal to the morality of the business world. It has to be to provide a mixed balance of policy instruments, policy framework, legislation, and regulation to manage how these business entities behave, in these situations, to ensure that they do not try to exploit citizens. You can't preach, you have to regulate.
Let me go to your colleague now. Mukhtar, as a business person, I filled my stock, got my stock when the naira was 650, 680 to $1. I'm selling now, and I can see that the naira is well over 1,000 naira to $1, and I will need to refill my stock. Should I still be selling at the price of the price I was selling when I brought in the goods at 680 naira to $1? And a friend of mine was actually telling me, he says, Gwala, you know what? All these platitudes, he called it. He said all these platitudes are not necessary, because it's a reality out there that because of the poverty level of Nigerians, there is even that an average entrepreneur now is contending with what he called price resistance. That even when the reality is slapping you in the face that you need to increase your price, you just know that the market, your customers may not be able to afford this. Some of them are now selling prices that we even take them out of the market because they may not be able to restock. How would you respond to, on the one hand, the president's exhortation, and the other hand, the remark by this a friend of mine whose name I don't want to disclose? Mukhtar.
Yeah, thank you, sir, again. And I think Ms. Shegu have already said my mind. And you also say it's an exhortation from the president. Economic does not answer to preaching. Economics answer to policies. You do the right policy, you don't need to preach. It's garbage in, garbage out. Demand and supply. That's what you need to do. So all these issues they're talking about, market forces. You came to power, you made market forces to be very powerful. You say you want to run capitalism, and so market forces need to have the final say. And they're having the final say. And so what you need to do is to come up with policy that will make market forces begin to think about what they have in their final say. Then you decide the final say for them based on your policy. So all what the president is saying, and the president is a businessman, he's been in business before, 600, when I know that when I want to restock, I want to maximize profit. Capitalism in business is all about profit. So if you see any loophole to maximize profit, you maximize profit. That's why you're in business. So when people talk about morality in business is relative. It's relative, because morality could be that I'm providing employment for a lot of Nigerians. So that's my moral standard. So I need to make money to to pay them good salaries. So I don't believe in all these issues that say the businessmen are immoral, that they create the jobs. They know what they go through to create the jobs. So you come up with your own policy to make them drive down prices. It's only in Nigeria you get to hear some things like price control, price regulation, you just get to do the right policies and everything will stand that. You get the right policy on ground. Yes, there's regulation. You need to regulate. And in regulating, you need to look at market forces. You need to look at market demands. You look at economic tendency. You look to look at macroeconomic stability. Like in the estate, I said that I stay at the point they said, the Loma people should not increase their charges and this and that. But here, the estate themselves were also increasing their own charges to landlords and tenants that are staying here. So, and now you're saying somebody else should not increase. It doesn't work like that. The same economic cruelty that you're going to, that's what they are going to. Government has not been prudent. And I expected a lot of prudency with the economic situation we're having in this country with President Tinubu, but I'm not seeing that yet. where a country will go out with about 400 and something delegates. And you have to sponsor for a conference in Dubai, that at the end of the day, you will not be able to implement some of the policies that they are saying to implement, because you lack the will, you lack the technology, you lack everything to make it work. So when people begin to talk about morality or immorality in a businessman, I begin to ask them, where is the morality there? The morality for me is to provide jobs. The morality for me is to make that you put food on somebody's table, because government have not been able to do that. And government all over the world do not do that either. So I don't understand where the president is coming to say, don't take capitalism is all about taking advantage. That's the truth. That's the whole idea of capitalism. Every businessman, that's why you see, they will say it's tax evasion. Every businessman don't want to pay the right tax if he has the means. So he looked at other loopholes not to be able to pay. So that is how it is globally. That's the beauty of capitalism. So as a government, I think you need to put the right policy down. It needs to be market forces. Then in terms of market forces, what policy are you putting to restrict market forces? I don't think we should be bothering ourselves about the exaltation of Mr. President. He needs to do the right.
Let's get into some specifics now. The president, I want to believe, maybe my summation or my summary of the two opinions I'm hearing from you may be wrong, but I'm hearing two gentlemen who are politely and respectfully saying that the president's preachment or exhortation amounts to a kind of economic superfluity that is not useful in economics, in basic economics. That you should be looking at policies. And when you say you should be looking at policies, one who is reporting like me, or one who is where I am, would say, okay, but some economists, those of you economists who are professionals here, celebrated some of his policies: removal of subsidy, deregulation or liberalization of the 5-window forex market. But these are the policies that are now precipitating the scorching circumstances that people find themselves. Mr. Shepperton, how would you want to respond to that?
Well, you know, this thing that you talk about will not go away anytime soon. It's just the reality. There is a divide amongst even policy experts as to the propriety of these policies. You know, whether they were necessary at all, and two, even if they were, whether the timing was right. Three, even if the timing was right, whether the approach was right. And, you know, you find people of very well-respected members of different professions falling on either side of this conversation. For me, I have been very open, very vocal about my opposition to the removal of subsidy from day one. Long before now, even the 2012 conversation, I said subsidy was not our problem. I still do not believe it has been our problem. I do not believe it has solved the problem, and we can actually see the evidence. 7 months, you know, down the line, almost 7 months now down the line, we can see that there hasn't been any savings in reality, in truth, except if we just want to lie to ourselves. What we have seen is that there has been an increase in FAC allocations as a result of the devaluation of the Naira. And that gain for government, unfortunately, will not translate or percolate down to the population who are suffering from that very gain, the other side of that sword, who are suffering the effect of the other side of that sword. So while the government is gaining in revenue, let's even assume there's a saving in the subsidies, right? The populace who the subsidies were supposed to, who the subsidy removal was supposed to help, were supposed to create an environment and an economics environment where there can be development and progress and it can be better for them. They are not seeing that. And the reality is that those types of policies cannot result in cannot achieve the result you're expecting in the short term. They are long-term solutions to long-term problems. So when you implement policies like that, you have to be prepared for the downside, for the flip side. And those flip sides come immediately, the benefits come later. So how do you transit your people from the immediate problems such that they will be around to benefit from the long-term benefits? And that is where there is a cataclysmic failure on the part of government so far. So look at the effect on inflation, for example. Before the subsidy removal, before the unification of the exchange rate and all of that, inflation was already running out of control, right? And this was on the back of things that really were not local to Nigeria alone. So if you look at inflation in the United States and the United Kingdom, Canada, Russia, India, even China, over the last 2 years, it had been rising. But if you look at what has happened to inflation in the United States, for example, as at last year, it was 8 points, it got as high as 10% per annum. Guess how much inflation is today in the US? 4.1. In the United Kingdom, it's the same thing. It was 8 point something, 8.9 or thereabouts last year. We're down to 5, and you can go across all the major developed economies around the world. The inflation has been curtailed with the instrumentality of very, very clear-cut policy initiatives that have curtailed this thing, put it under control, and they can continue with the economic development and economic growth programs. That has not been the case in Nigeria. So we were part of that entire global problem up until, when the subsidy thing came up. Instead of us being able to curtail our inflation, it's gone further out of control, and we're going to hit 30. According to analysts, we'll hit 30% before the end of this year. So you can clearly see that the policies themselves may have been good. The jury is still out. We don't know. But the immediate effect, we obviously did not prepare for. We did not think of how to manage those immediate effects to limit the damage it was going to have on the population who are already very, very deeply impoverished. And here we are today. It's clear that the
Okay, Mukhtar. Hello, Mukhtar.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we have a situation where the president says he's very confident that the palliative distribution of 15,000 naira to 15 million, about 11 to 12% of the multidimensionally poor Nigerians, that it will go a long way to alleviate their circumstance or ameliorate their condition. I see you smile. I see you almost telling me politely that you this gentleman, is this the, let me let you, it's a question. However, seemingly, saddening and funny it may seem. How would you want to respond to that?
Well, cash transfer is the new way of addressing poverty, but not the new way of addressing multidimensional poverty. And then when you're looking at cash transfer need to be done with data. We need to ask ourselves, where did we get this policy of cash transfer? It happened during the Asia economic, especially in Bangladesh, where they came up with this process of cash transfer. And that worked because of data. That worked also in America, also during the COVID-19 pandemics. And you saw that people that collected wire fraud through all those processes have been arrested because there's a system, there's a structure. In a country where you don't even know the number of poor people, you don't even know the number of citizens you have, population census have not been taken. And in a country whereby the National Bureau of Statistics came up with a new process of aligning poverty to mean that poverty is all about if you have a job for one day, for 1 hour, you get a job. That means you have a job. You could imagine what that means. That means every Nigerian that go to a site to work for 1 hour and that is not paid, is paid a 1 hourly or daily, they say it's not employed. And so they calculate that on underemployment, and by doing that, it's only 3% of Nigerians are not employed. So you can see a lot of things that happen because we don't have data. Now, this policy has been hijacked by politicians. All you need to do is also think back about the trader money that was being distributed by the previous administration, where the then vice president went all around to give traders money. What has happened to that money? It became a conduit pipe for corruption. It became a conduit pipe to buy vote for people to vote for them. So I don't actually believe in a cash transfer policy, because we don't have the data to support that. And again, who is poor? Who is the poor of the poor? Because they said now in Nigeria we have the poor. Before we have the poor, we have the poor of the poor before the poor. So who is the poor of the poor? And if you are transferring about 10,000, 15,000, how much will it be able to do? That means it's not even up. It's not even up to like $20 if you look at today's exchange rate. So that's what you are transferring to individuals to make their living. So I don't think that policy has worked. I remember when the current minister came up, and Betty, he said about it that the register was bad. They have to clean up the register. So they finished cleaning up the register, and then they are doing the tax transfer. And this thing normally get politicized, because sometimes they say, okay, you're a member of APC, you get the cash transfer. Politicians use that as a tool to win elections. And opposition that are in opposition in the state, but they are the ruling party in the centers also use that. I can assure you that will happen very soon in the Edo election. You see that most of the cash transfer will be done during those periods. So it's all about politicizing every good policy that we have in Nigeria, and it's so bad. But again, this policy has not worked because we don't have the data to back up what we are doing.
Okay, let me see if Mr. Sokoto is back now. Is Segun back? Okay. Mukhtar, as we speak, apart from the cash transfer, immediately after the subsidy removal, we were hearing about the federal government putting in place a very articulate policy to help in the conversion of vehicles, especially mass transit vehicles. Here you go again. You are turning this program to a comedy show. Putting policies in place, to help in the articulation of conversion, especially of commercial vehicles, from using dirty fossil fuel, PMS and diesel, to using relatively lighter fossil fuel, but still dirty, but relatively cleaner, CNG in particular, because a liter equivalent of CNG is under 200 naira, and a liter of diesel is now 1,250, 1,350, depending on location. What's your take of how well the government has gone about implementing this policy?
Have you seen any of those buses?
Not quite. Maybe because I drive. I don't take public transport. I wouldn't know if those buses. If
those buses are around, the government would have made a noise and would have displayed it even in Plus TV. They would have made a paid advertorial to tell us that those buses are around. It's only Lagos State government, and it's a PPP policy whereby I think some of the vehicles, some of the BRT buses were supposed to drive by this, and it was a PPP issue between the Lagos State government and a corporation. So those buses cannot come earlier than first quarter of next year. So what it means is that the people will keep suffering until then. We see when we talk about when you come up with policies and you want to have an impact on the people, you come up with structural palliative. You don't come up with palliative, and that is where I have an issue with Labour. I think Labour should go for structural palliative. Structural palliative has to do with if you earn more, you have to pay us more. Now, as we stand now, the states, the federal government, and the local government have collected more revenue than they have ever collected before. And most of these states are still struggling to pay a living wage. Some of them have not left 18,000 naira minimum wage up to this moment. They have refused to negotiate with Labour. And the federal government have been playing politics also with negotiating with labor to come up with a firm national minimum wage. So that shows you that most of the issues that we are trying to do in terms of addressing the issues that brought about multidimensional poverty, we are paying late service to it. If you talk about those buses, we all know and they know that those buses cannot come in anytime soon. It takes a lot to get about 1,000 of those buses to Nigeria. So we have to wait, and in our waiting, what are the people enjoying? Aside of the government telling us that today that they have about 250 billion of subsidy of electricity, which for me is fantastic. That is, when you spend money like that, it's also good because you are not just spending it to a few that benefited in the subsidy scheme, but it's touching every Nigerian, because every Nigerian that has power at a particular time is enjoying subsidy comparable to the subsidy that was being enjoyed by the few that are the cabal in the oil industry. So I was a good advocate of removal of subsidy, and I still stand that subsidy was a scam, and that we can go on and talk about that, like give you a lot of reasons why I think subsidy was a scam. Now, the government policies they've come up with, why have we not seen those impacts? Like Mr. Shekepon said to talk before he went on, some of these policies are long-term driven. But in the long term, what are you doing in the short term? You need to, when you're trying to address policy, you need to have the short term, the long term, the medium term, and the short term.
Let's also give him the opportunity to catch up with some of the things we've discussed in his absence. Your colleague Segun is of the belief that he has not seen any serious-minded policy articulation to address especially the short-term punitive effects of some of the policies of like subsidy removal, like forex liberalization of the. So, how would you want to respond to that?
I didn't quite catch a question, especially the policy. How we want to respond.
I said in your absence, your colleague Mukhtar was saying that he agreed with you that the short-term plans to ameliorate the conditions of the citizenry have been so lacking that even if these things will work in the long term, in the short term, it's like the people have been thrown to the sharks. And I'm saying, okay, what are some of the ideas? We shouldn't just be finger pointing now. What are some of the ideas that somebody like you would rather like to see? I spoke with him concerning CNG, and he asked me a frank question. If I had seen those vehicles running on our streets, I probably would. I've not seen any. If I've seen, and I don't even know where they will refuel if they put those buses on the streets. But how would you want to respond to the fact that, and also give some suggestions?
Well, look, the reality, if we're being honest with ourselves, is that you can't have a short-term response to a long-term problem. A policy that is trying to provide a long-term solution or a long-term benefit to the entire country and the entire economy. You can't have short-term measures that can ameliorate the effects. It's practically impossible. I have thought about this. You can run all the models you want to run, and you find that in the end, if you try whatever short-term measures you want to put in place to deal with the impact, the short-term impact of these supposedly good policies, the cost implications would rubbish the need to have taken those decisions in the first place. The amount of money that you will need to spend to cushion the impact of subsidy removal will be so high that removing the subsidies might have then become completely unnecessary. Even if the argument from other quarters might be no, that might not be true, because you can spend, if I'm saving 4 trillion naira per annum, for example, in subsidies, and I spend 4 trillion naira this year, and I spend 4 trillion naira next year to provide palliative, so to speak, at least if the implication of that is that in the third year, by year 3 or by year 4, I am no longer spending that 4 trillion naira per annum, then what I've done is that I've converted the subsidy, I've converted that line item in my budget that says subsidy. I've converted it to different programs that are targeting the citizens and trying to push in the impact of the subsidies in the first year and the second year. And then by the third year, the 4 trillion that I was spending on subsidy or the 4 trillion I will be spending on palliatives will be out of my budget entirely. So I've spent 2 years trying to provide some sort of short-term solutions, while saving money for the 4th year. So that is an argument. However, for me, I don't think that there is any short-term benefits or short-term solutions to this subsidy problem or even to the exchange rate unification policy. I think what should have happened, and this is the answer to your question, what should have happened is that we should have taken a medium-term outlook to the implementation of these policies and then use that medium-term period to prepare for the cushioning of the impact of these policies when they are eventually implemented. So you give yourself 2 years, for example. So the president could have announced on May 29th and said, we are planning to remove subsidies. This is our target date. And then between now and then, we are going to deploy 20,000 CNG stations all across the country. We're going to provide so and so amount of money in loans, maybe 1 trillion naira in loans, to enable people to change their power sources so that people can then maybe install solar panels, in their businesses and in their homes and in their offices, with help from government, and so on and so many other policies. The policies that you want to roll out, give yourself time to buy them. You go through the public procurement process, buy them, go through the public procurement process, and then, engage the people that are going to be running it. These things will take time. It takes maybe, let's say, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So you start that process, begin to implement those things. And then at a particular point, you have some sort of hurdle or trigger point in the implementation program. Then you will know that, okay, we're ready. Then you can then announce, subsidy is gone, we're unifying exchange rate, and any other thing you want to do. So by the time you are doing that, the inflationary impact that you would have seen without having done those things would have been curtailed to a significant extent. So we didn't do this, and that's why we're seeing what is going on now. We simply went ahead to bluster our way through the problem. Now, the argument some people will give is that if the president had made these types of announcements during his speech, that would have given a warning, to the cartels, like Mukhtar says, it's a scam, and if it's a scam, then there are obviously some scammers behind it. So maybe that would have given a warning to these scammers, and then they would have also had a counter initiative to sabotage the entire thing and all of that. And my response to that has always been, look, this is all about leadership and will. If you really, really want to do these things, we'll do them regardless of whose ox is God. And I think this is really where the problem is, because what we have done is that we have looked at the lowest hanging fruit in quotes. We've looked at the path of least resistance in quotes. And in this situation, the lowest hanging fruit and the path of least resistance, unfortunately, is the people of Nigeria, who we know can do nothing. They're powerless, as against a few 1,000 people who can sabotage the entire process of government.
Let me put this follow-up to Mukhtar. Mukhtar, somebody may want to say that, but the president met a reality that spoke to the fact that the subsidy the subsidy budget was literally empty. Was going to be non-existent. Just about a month to the day he said subsidy was gone. So even if he wanted the subsidy regime to continue, the reality was such that the budgetary allocation could only last till the end of June when it was being sworn in on the 29th of May. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think the president said it also in his speech that, I mean, later after we heard that was not in his speech, he decided to come up with it himself, and he said it also, he alluded to that he came up with that himself. It was not in his original speech. And that tells you that the policymakers, like Mr. Soton said, must have looked at it, would have been thinking of coming up with policy on ground before you come up with the removal of subsidy. But I, for one, like I said, I felt that subsidy was not doing more to our economy, was doing more damage to our economy than what we're gaining in the long run. And like he said, that also has to do because government were not really in charge of subsidy, because we didn't even know how much subsidy we're paying, what we were paying subsidy for. Because I remember during the pandemic, where everybody was at home, Nigeria was still consuming more fuel than like if we were going out every day. So that gives you the fact that subsidy was just being used as a scam to make some other people rich. So many Nigerians have become rich because of subsidy policy of the government. Those all various governments, not only the last government. So definitely, I think, and that's where I think fuel subsidy will have to go. And for me, it's one of the best policy. Now, was it the right time to have done that? I think, well, I don't mind say the right time for the best policy is now. So if that was going to, but I totally agree with him that we didn't put measures on ground to tackle some of the challenges that we're going to face with those subsidy removal. But the way that subsidy should have gone, I think it should have gone earlier than when he decided. Remember, before then, President Buhari was saying he was going to go late subsidy by January. At that point, we were spending about 6-point-something trillion in subsidy alone. I don't think that was good for our economy. Our economy was bleeding. But like you said, there was no even allocation after June. I think the president decided to take the bull by the horn and make that statement. My own challenge is, like what he said, was in the floating of the currency. In that one, it's a straight way of, if you want to float your currency, you make sure you have the liquidity. You don't allow your currency to be battered by market forces.
Segun, we really have to wrap it up at this juncture. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We really appreciate you. Your contributions have been so enlightening. Thank you. Today is throwback.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Today is throwback. The Mayins, generally called the Lajes, the least celebrated of the historical owners of coastal Lagos. That is, parts of the island, the mainland, and parts of Epe, Ikorodu, and Badagry divisions. Mayin land is historically and contemporarily an integral part of the Laje nation, and the Mayin people are a significant linguistic group within the ancestral Yoruba family. Historical records indicate that they migrated from Ile-Ife, their original home, around the 10th century, but evidences abound that, like the Jaws and other coastal civilizations, their dexterity on water took them as far down the Atlantic Ocean as Namibia, and as far up as the upper crust of the Bight of Guinea. The kingship title of Mayin Kingdom is the Amapetu, and they have been a dominant and relevant force in the Laje country and the wider Yoruba kingdom for centuries. Indeed, they once killed an Oba of Benin, Oba Ehebuda, and routed his navy. Geographically, Mayin land lies between latitude 61.4 north and longitude 43.4 east, and is bordered by Ikale in the north, Ijebu in the west, Shekiri and Ugbo in the east, Edo in the northeast, and the Atlantic Ocean to the south. The kingdom consists of several coastal areas such as Orimoloye, Magbenyiwa, Igbokuta, and Mofere, as well as hinterland settlements like Ode Mayin, Igbolomi, Atijere, Igbokoda, Aboto, Igbo, Egunrin, Mayin, Tedo, Itebukumi, and Orara. These locations have played a vital role in the historical and cultural significance of the Mayan people. The Mayan Kingdom's location along the Atlantic coastline of present-day Ondo State in Nigeria has influenced its cultural and historical prominence. The intricate network of coastal and hinterland settlements reflects the breadth of Mayan dominance and the enduring legacy of its people. As one of the ancient Yoruba kingdoms, Mayin holds a unique place in the rich tapestry of coastal West African and Nigerian history and the wider Yoruba cultural heritage. The Aye Mafule Ilaje chant resounds through the ages, symbolizing the enduring spirit of the Mayan people and their timeless connection to the ancestral land come littoral space. Their legacy embodies the resilience and cultural richness of the Yoruba nation, particularly many historic families and localities in Lagos's 4 out of the 5 administrative divisions, making Mainland a crucial cornerstone of Nigeria's historical and cultural landscape. I am Bola Oba.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the Babin, I pay my rent. From the Babin, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
First smoothie we are making is mango smoothie. Mango smoothie is high in vitamin D. It helps to fight some bacteria in the system, like if you are having a constipation and you are taking mango smoothie, it helps you to digest it very well. Also, mango smoothie help the nutrient in mango smoothie. It's just as if it's 10 times the nutrient in the bread we eat. So you can replace your bread with the mango smoothie. If a woman is having a menstrual cramp, like difficulty in menstruation, mango smoothie do help a lot. As you take it twice a day, the 50 cl bottle, we have 50 cl bottle or a cup twice a day, it helps it. There are some thick blood in the vessel. Like you see some people, their vein will be like squeezing. Once you are taking it regularly, you fight it as well. We are using mango, tiger nuts, and ginger. The ginger stands as a preservative for it to stay longer.
Okay, then the tiger nut?
The tiger nut is the liquid that we use. Tiger nut juice.
Okay.
Yes, already made. So,
already made.
Yes.
So,
Okay, I'm cutting to make the blender, the juicer, use it easily, because the whole one cannot go direct into it. Can turn this one. No, plain orange. It's good for somebody that have cancer, diabetes. So you should be taking it. Anybody that have a low sugar also can be taking it. Time to. The next one I'm doing now is beetroot cucumber juice. The work of the beetroot mostly is for, if number one, it removes some bacteria in the mouth. Those bad bacteria in the mouth, it removes it. If someone is having bad breath and you keep taking beetroot on daily basis, it clears it off. Bad breath. Yes. Like I can say, I know some people that we've used it for and it worked perfectly. So it gives blood. Yes, it gives blood. It helps also fight some bacteria like heart disease in the system. So once it's going to your blood vessel, any bad bacteria there, they vanish.